Thank you, President. That was perfectly timed, Steve. That clock went off.
Was it really?
Just as you ended, yes. I will need 3.5 minutes. I'm a new councilman, so I went back and I checked the minutes of this past council meetings where this council resolved to fight Nexus to make sure that a dangerous pipeline did not come through our city. In those minutes, there was never any discussion about whether or not they would be entering someday into a settlement agreement or just hold out and see what they could get from Nexus. That's not what council did. That's not what communities do. And that's not what communities should do. Now, that's perfectly fine for an individual landowner or homeowner to strike a deal. They've got to get the most out of a terrible situation when their land is affected. But a community is different, especially our community, a healthy, vibrant community that doesn't need a handout from Nexus. I want to remind you, this is a community which several years ago determined that we did not want a casino in Green. Even though we would have financially benefited, we stood up and said no. Just last year, this council said no to businesses that were interested in the medical marijuana industry. Again, we could have benefited financially. Instead, we stood up and said no. Now, there are a lot of people affected by this pipeline, not just the people whose land is touched by the pipe. It's also the people whose land isn't being touched by the pipe. I think we discussed this a number of times, and here tonight, our neighbors like Mark Loveland and Pavwasik, we heard them tonight. Their land is being touched by this, or their land is right next to property being touched. They're not going to see a penny, not 1 red cent in compensation. Yet they have to live knowing that within a stone's throw to their property, they have a 36-inch high-pressure gas pipe. This affects anyone who drives through our city. This pipe doesn't just go through some land in somebody else's neighborhood. It goes under our roads. We are all going to be affected by the pipeline. Now, I'm going to vote no tonight. And here's why. I just ran for council. I knocked on your doors. I looked you in the eye. I told you I supported the city's efforts to fight Nexus, and I do. I support the fight. I do not support the surrender. We have heard one legal opinion. It's not the only one. And I think I can say confidently that Attorney Mucklow, who is fighting against Nexus for others, believes this is a bad deal for Green. Now, there are no guarantees in this fight. If we vote no tonight, we might take it on the chin. We know that going in. But I would argue that would not be a loss. A no vote tonight keeps our fight against Nexus alive. And at the very least, it sends the following message to the next industry that wants to harm our city. This is a city that said no to gambling. This is a city that said no to marijuana. This is a city that said no to Nexus. And this is a city that cannot be bought. You can take your business elsewhere. You can't put it in our backyard. I respectfully ask my fellow council members now to join me in voting no.